This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the Xbox Developer Direct, more wins for PC on the PlayStation side, big changes coming to PlayStation leadership, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 69. I am your host, the man whose nose is running, so he better go catch it, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who, if he were made a CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, would bring over every previous game and end exclusivity immediately, Justin, better known as I am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Week was very slow for the first part of it since last week, and then sort of recovered over the past few days. So around Thursday-ish, and it's funny because of what you'll be sharing, but I caught a cold, and then it was sort of fine on Thursday and Friday, but Saturday it just hit me hard, and I was just recovering that day and recovering some of Sunday. Monday, I started feeling much better, and by Tuesday, much better. And I still have a little remnants of it here, which is mainly just congestion here and there, but I'm pretty much essentially fully recovered. So it really cut down on a lot of the gaming time I wanted to spend over like the weekend, but at least I got to get some rest at least. Yesterday, since I was off for today, I decided to spend the evening late through the night with my friends, since that's normally around the time that we would normally hang out and stuff. So went over to his house. We did some gaming, and which I'll discuss later on. And one thing though, he wants me to check out. He said he initially had a problem with his Steam Deck not fully charging up, and I went to look at it. I was examining it, and it seems like it wasn't charging at all. Not just holding a charge, but it wouldn't even begin charging to begin with. And I brought my charger with me. I brought my dock with me, and also my Steam Deck as well, just to see if there was anything wrong with the cables or anything like that. But nothing, no combination that I tried seemed to work. So what I did was I took it back home with me since I bought it for him originally. And even though it has been a few years since I bought it for him, I decided to go ahead, try contacting Valve and seeing if there was something I could do. They said even though it's out of warranty, they could still try to see if they can do an RMA. So I shipped it out today. Hopefully there's something they can identify whatever's the problem with it, and fix it if there's anything there. And then we can just have it shipped back soon after that. So hopefully nothing really big is happening on that end. But yeah, that pretty much summarizes my weekly events.
All right. I'm glad you were able to recover from your sickness. I, on the other hand, mine's been pretty mild. It's pretty typical for usually when I get sick. It's not much of anything. It's mostly in my throat, a bit in my sinuses. Got a runny nose for a bit earlier, but it seems to have stopped for the time being at least. So we'll see how much I'm sniffling and or wiping my nose during the podcast, but it is what it is. I mean, it's really not too bad. It just basically meant that I didn't go to church tonight for discipleship, and I'm not going to be going to the office tomorrow for work, probably not Friday either, unless I'm feeling significantly better. Because even though I don't feel that bad, I don't really want to get other people sick, so. But we led music on Sunday, and I was starting to feel it a little bit Sunday morning, but it wasn't bad enough to where it had any impact on my ability to sing and everything, so it really wasn't too big of a deal. And it wasn't really until Monday Monday morning I was feeling a little bit, and then by Monday evening it was definitely starting to hit me, and today's been, the last 2 days have been not too bad. I mean, it's worse than it was, but it's still not bad. So I've still been able to do, most of the stuff I needed to do and all that. And so that's good at least. Trying to think if there's anything else. I know there hasn't been anything major. Not forgetting to mention my daughter's birthday again. Yeah, I feel like, like we finished up White Collar this week, which was pretty cool, and restarted Psych, since we have that on Blu-ray now, and so of course that's great, but otherwise I really can't think of anything going on. Been pretty uneventful. I ended up spending a lot more time relaxing over the weekend than being very productive, so that was kind of nice.
It's always nice to get some relaxation.
So, what have you been playing this past week?
Alright, so I played some more Final Fantasy VII Remake. Didn't play as much of it as I wanted to, and I actually tried it on my Steam Deck this weekend. Now, I was surprised because I managed to get to run not at a locked, but pretty consistent 60 FPS, surprisingly. However, the downside though is that the resolution of the models looks it does not look good at all. It looks so blurry, especially if models are further out in the distance. It doesn't look great at all, and some certain aspects of the characters seem kind of pixelated, and I tried to look and see. Well, also I tried seeing if applying that fix at all would help, as far as like changing the settings in Steam to run in DirectX 11. Unfortunately, that doesn't work at all because it just leads to an error message. So you have to at least on the Steam Deck, you have to play it on through DirectX 12. I don't know if it's something you can do at all in Linux at all, or just the Steam Deck, but that's how it is right there. So I sort of managed to stomach it. I mean, I know that people said that in a couple forums that you could try to download the mod to like do that, but I didn't really feel like setting up the mod for my Steam Deck, so I was just thought I'll just try playing through the game anyway. Did some. It's manageable, but it's definitely not something I would recommend if you really care too much about it. I mean, sometimes like I said, a lot of characters just kind of look blurry, and unfortunately, there's not really too much you can do to change the settings, because I heard that there's dynamic resolution that's baked into the game, and you can't adjust any of the settings at all, which is leading to the reason as to why they're like sometimes looking worse than they are at other times. So yeah, definitely played that. But when I went back onto my PC though, it was definitely much more better, and still getting that better frame rate as well. And I did try out one of the summon battles, and it definitely was tough. I feel like if I had some party members, it could have been easier. But just going off the bat, it definitely was a bit of a challenge. I mean, I made it through, thankfully, but I feel like if there are more, the future summons will if this first one is any indication, the future summons will definitely be more difficult, and that stuff. Actually, I'm wondering right now, because I don't have anyone in my party right now since Aerith left. Can you actually fight with party members in summon battles? Or
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. Well then I probably could have waited to do this then and not tried to just do it on the first try like that. Okay. Well, that's good to know in the future. But yeah, so that's pretty much everything that I've done so far in Final Fantasy VII. Not too much, but made a little bit of progress, and also know maybe I shouldn't try playing it on the Steam Deck. But moving along, so this is the next game I've been trying to. Well, I'll just go ahead and say what it is. It's Transformers Devastation, and this is a game I've wanted to play for quite a long while. And it's a game that was developed by Platinum Games, and it was one of the Activision games. So because it was an Activision game, unfortunately, it's delisted, and you cannot buy it on the Steam store. You can't buy it from your usual type of store like Green Man Gaming or or any place like that. So I had to go and buy this thing for much more than I definitely should have. But I thought, you know what? It's either this or sailing on the seven seas, and I don't really feel comfortable with that right now. So I said, I'll just go ahead, shell out this money, and I bought it. And I mean, fortunately, it does work. That's at least the good news. So the game, it really kind of reminds me to a degree. I mean, partially because it is a Platinum's game. It reminds me kind of Bayonetta, the way it's combat, sort of a, action-based game, but you do have sort of elements of like, sort of the witch time dodges you can do. But because it's also Transformers, and it does have that emphasis, or not emphasis, but it does have the excuse me, it does have the range combat as well. So you are using your blasters to attack enemies from afar, especially the flying lens, because there are definitely those in the game. And of course, because it's Transformers, you do transform, get to move around, jump over gaps if you are in vehicle mode, and stuff like that. Haven't gone too much into the game. I'm pretty much still in the first, I think it's like the first chapter, first mission, stuff like that. So originally I was just really testing it, to see how it ran on the Steam Deck, which it does work. You can still run the game at, I think it doesn't have 800p, so it's only 720p, but you can still run it, high settings, which there aren't really too many settings options anyway, but you can still run at high 60 FPS, have a good time. So I've played a little bit of that. Now, I don't have any footage for these games, but these were what I was playing at my friend's house. Dragon's Crown, that's a game that is made by Vanillaware. If you know who made the games like Odin Sphere, Muramasa, Demon Blade, and also Unicorn Overlord. So we played some of that. This game is kind of like a beat 'em up, like a fantasy beat 'em up. So we played that for a while, and actually that was primarily the game we played. Initially, we were just going to try it and see how we liked it, but it definitely was pretty good. Definitely has, or from what we can see so far, a pretty decent story, and the different characters and the way they perform definitely help. And it does partially also have sort of a loot element to it, where the fact that you can find weapons that are that have the same name, but they might have certain values, might have certain abilities added to them. So it does help to you can easily help improve the weapons that you have, in addition to stuff like your skills. So it's definitely a fun game. Only problem is it's pretty much essentially exclusive to the PlayStation, but then also Vanillaware is just not PC friendly at all. So but it's still a good game though, and still, if you have a PlayStation, I would recommend giving that a shot. And we played a little bit of Earth Defense Force 5. That game's kind of like a Japanese-ish Helldivers too, because it's like a third person. You're fighting aliens, or essentially, so far from what we've seen, giant ants attacking Earth. So just have your weapons going out. I mean, it's much easier than Helldivers too. I will say that. But you sort of are in your own squad, and surprisingly, it also has split screen, which is a nice feature you don't always see nowadays. So played some of that, not as much as we did with Dragon's Crown, but that was fun. And then lastly, my niece and nephew, they came over earlier today, and they wanted to play some they went to play Farm Game. So we played some Stardew Valley, and this week I happened to record us in our session, so that we could actually sort of see how the game is when you're playing it on split screen. And yeah, it definitely was interesting, to say the least, since playing it on a smaller monitor, you definitely have to make sure you're sitting up to it to actually see clearly. But yeah, we didn't really do too much. I was trying to manage work on the farm while they were just walking around trying to see people and just like explore everywhere. And unfortunately, I happened to catch this a bit too late, but I saw that our money supply was quickly dwindling, and I was wondering, why is our money supply dropping? And it was my niece was buying ice cream repeatedly. So I caught her attention. I said, wait, you don't do that. You're spending all of our money. And she spent half of our wallet, which I was going to save up so we could actually buy some actually buy some animals, but yeah, so we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board on that one. But yeah,
That's funny.
it was a good time overall. But yeah, that's actually everything that I've played this week.
Nice. Yeah, that your niece, buying all that ice cream, it just makes me think of my daughter because, she'll tell me that's just about anything that's sweet is her favorite, and it's because it's sweet. It's my favorite because it's sweet. And when my wife was pregnant with her, it was always cravings for sweets. So I just thought that was funny. But going back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, so out of curiosity, when you're playing it on the Steam Deck, are you just playing it on low settings, or are you playing it on high, or how are you playing it?
It seems like nothing really made too much of a difference. The only thing I did was, well, I mean, it was 720p was the lowest resolution you could drop it to. I tried tinkering around with like the settings. I think I might have changed the NPC. I can't remember what this thing is called, but like how many are like the load in essentially. Like I think I changed it from 8, which is what I have on my desktop. I dropped it down to 6 or something like that. But the other settings I think I left pretty much the same. I mean, I could always try going back and tinkering and seeing if dropping them helps, but
I don't think it makes any
at
difference.
least from on PC, it didn't seem to make a difference.
No, I don't think it does. Because I remember, because the first place I played it was Steam Deck, and yeah, it didn't seem to make any difference regardless of which you had it set at. So that was nice. But I will say one thing for sure. Compared to Remake, Rebirth looks a lot worse on Steam Deck. To get a decent frame rate. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, with the summon battles, I can't remember exactly how many summons there are, but there's one fight that you can only do in hard mode, I believe, and I might be mistaken on the actual difficulty of the fight. I think the summon fight itself is not restricted in terms of items, because the summon, the arena battle things that you do don't have that restriction of not being able to use items. So from that standpoint, it's great, but there's one where, let's see here, I believe the first fight is against Leviathan, and then it might be, I feel like there's like, you might fight, I think you fight Shiva, then you fight Leviathan, and then you fight Ifrit and Bahamut at the same time in the rounds. So it's pretty crazy. So yeah, if you don't have all your, have 3 party members, I mean, I know that there are people who are skilled enough that they can do better than that. I've seen some people like going through the entire thing with just Aerith, and it was like really impressive, but I'm not that skilled, so. But yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah. Cool. That Transformers game looks pretty cool, and like when I was watching, I was like, that might be fun. And then of course you said it's delisted. It's like, okay, never mind. I'm not paying extra for a delisted game. I don't care that much. But yeah. All right. Well, before I get into obviously talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because that's going to be the main thing. Between the Xbox Direct that we watched last week and some very terrible gameplay from a certain PlayStation fanboy of Doom 2016, I decided this evening, just because I had a little bit of extra time, to jump back into the PC version of 2016. It's funny because the fanboy's gameplay, he was playing it like a PlayStation game, trying to use cover and ducking behind cover and stuff, and just like terrible aiming, and I don't know, it was just like, it's very clear he's either never played this game or he just is so used to the way that most PlayStation first party games are that he just doesn't know how this game functions. But that aside, it made me think about, wanting to play it. And the other funny thing was he posted a video on Twitter of his gameplay. He's like, flawless 60 FPS gameplay on PS5 Pro. And I'm thinking, for one, you can get basically a locked 60 frames per second on the Steam Deck. So there's that. But furthermore, like on my PC, on my desktop, I'm getting minimum, like at the very lowest, in a couple spots here and there, it'll drop down to 80, but most of the time it's anywhere from 150 to 200 frames per second on my desktop. And so anyway, I just was like playing through a level again. It showed that I was missing one of the objectives, and so I thought I was, but then when I went into it, it's like it showed that the objective completed, and so I finished out the level and just didn't worry about it. But yeah, over time, before Doom the Dark Ages drops, or before I'm ready to play it at least, I want to replay Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. So play those between PC and Steam Deck, swap between the two platforms depending on, when I'm playing. So, but yeah, so I just played a little bit this evening of that. But as I mentioned before, the biggest thing I've been playing is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So, couple things to say about this. For the most part, this game looks amazing. I will say Unreal Engine 4 is not good for open worlds. At least not with the way Square Enix does it. Because there are definitely times where it gets a little blurry, and that's even with the settings essentially maxed out. Because I'm running the game on high settings. I can max out all the settings that are available to max out, but there's like one setting you can do on ultra, and the rest of them the max I can go to is high. And I think that's the case even with higher end cards, that it can't go above high for those settings, which is just kind of weird. But sometimes when you're in the open world, the dynamic resolution that's a default thing for this game just gets kind of weird, and it gets a little on the blurry side. The other thing is that anti-aliasing, your only options are you have TAA, the standard temporal anti-aliasing, temporal anti-aliasing upsampling, which I think might be a little bit more demanding, and it's better than TAA because TAA just looks awful. But it's definitely more demanding too, and it's not great. And then, at least on an NVIDIA card, you have DLSS. And it's like, you don't have the option to use nothing. I mean, you can do like modding the, adding like an engine file that you can mod the file and turn off anti-aliasing, and I tried that briefly, but on the desktop, it actually really, like, a lot of it looks better without the anti-aliasing, but like, the hair looks really weird because it's just kind of wispy, and it's just bizarre. So I ended up turning off the anti-aliasing, but I was able to get motion blur turned off that way. As an overall thing with the settings, there are more visual settings on this than there are on Remake, but there's still not a lot of visual settings. So it's pretty bare bones in terms of what you can do. No field of view slider. You can't turn off motion blur. Even though the motion blur isn't bad in the game, it's definitely, it's not terrible. Like, it wasn't so bad that I was noticing it most of the time. It's about the same as it is in Remake, so kind of goes back and forth on how bad it is, but usually it's not that bad. It's not like in Persona 3 Reload, where it was just like really, really bad, and I had to turn it off because it was so bad. In most games, I turn it off anyway. But anyway, so as far as the performance with these settings, running 1080p, On average, I'm getting above 80 frames per second in outdoor areas. I think occasionally it will drop into the 70s, and there might even be like occasional drops where it drops quite a bit lower, but it's like usually just for a couple seconds, and it's not during combat or anything. It's basically just like traversal that does that. It's basically just traversal where it does that, and the it can go up to 120 frames per second, because 120 is the max that you can do it at anyway, and it kind of just varies, like, because the open areas are actually open, whereas Remake, they weren't really open. They were just kind of like, they appeared open, but they were still pretty enclosed. And this one, it's actually like big open world areas after you get through the very beginning of the game, and those are where the frame rate suffers the most, but it's still not bad at all. Like, it's still above 70 the majority of the time, even with all the high settings. And then, like, if I'm in caves or inside buildings that are, not like when I'm in towns and there's lots of NPCs, then it has kind of a lower frame rate, but it's not as low as it is in the open world. Still in the 80s. And then when I get outside of towns, or like if I'm in other enclosed areas where you're not dealing with a bunch of NPCs and everything else, then it's typically in the 100 to 120 range. So I'm pretty well satisfied with the performance. I wish that the dynamic resolution, technically you can get rid of it, but I don't know. The game is not perfect when it comes to optimization. Thankfully, I didn't have any of the like major stuttering issues for the most part that I had in Remake before I did that fix I told you about. Granted, although now that I think about it, I did do at least the NVIDIA control panel thing of turning on VSync from there, and that may be why I'm not really getting the stuttering. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, all that being said, I'm pretty well satisfied with the performance on PC. Runs well. The combat, it's still taking me some getting used to. I definitely have a better handle on it than when I first started trying to do it, just because I was so rusty. I'd be pressing A, thinking that it's either to dodge or to do something or to jump, and then it would actually be for bringing up the command menu. And I had to switch block over to L1 instead of R1 just because Dark Souls and most of the other games I've been playing, that's where block is. So, but I did that with Remake as well. I think for the most part, like, I have a pretty decent handle on the combat. It's still it's not entirely like gotten to the point of being muscle memory because I haven't played a ton. I think altogether I have around maybe 15 hours in the game between Thursday of last week and Wednesday today. So, in just under a week, I have about that much time. There's definitely some improvements to the combat. One of the things that I like a lot is that there's some materia now where it has two elements in the single materia. So like you get one that's fire and ice, or lightning and wind. So that's really nifty. And the skill tree is quite a bit different from how it was set up in Remake. And I'm still kind of learning it because it feels kind of like more like a standard skill tree versus what you had in Remake, where you were a bit more limited. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it's just different. And it, I don't know. I'm still learning a lot of the differences with this game compared to Remake. And I will say one of the things I have enjoyed so far is playing as Red 13, because he's one of the first party members you unlock in the game, or rather you have him, from the very beginning of the game. Or well, I guess technically not the beginning of the game because extremely minor spoiler since it's like the very beginning of the game, and if you played the original Final Fantasy VII, you already know about this. But um, basically, the beginning of the game, after like the initial prologue, you go into Nibelheim for Cloud and Sephiroth and Tifa. And Tifa's not fighting at that time, but you can fight as either Cloud or Sephiroth. So, but after that whole sequence is over, then Red 13 is one of the first characters you can control, along with Cloud and Aerith. And yeah, but story-wise, I just basically made it to Juno. I had been in the outskirts of Juno for a while, and basically just been wandering around and doing all the side stuff that I had the ability to do. Some of it you can't do until after you've finished the upper level of Juno. The whole parade and all that stuff. So I've only just finished doing what I needed to do in the lower Junon, or basically, like I fought that sea creature thing that you also fight in the original Final Fantasy VII, and that's about as far as I've gotten, just barely past that. But I'll get to Steam Deck performance and graphics and all that momentarily, but this game also has a new card game that they added called Queen's Blood, which is one of those where I basically understand how the game works, but I haven't got to a point where I feel like I understand it well enough to be good at it. I've been able to, ultimately win all the matches that I've done. But the nice thing is if you're losing a match, you can restart it before. As long as you restart it before the end of the match, you can restart the match. So you can try again without having to go through, whatever hassle you normally have to go through to do that most of the time in these mini games. Same goes with another mode that they originally introduced in Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission, which is the one where you play as Yuffie, that takes place after Remake, in between Remake and Rebirth, which is a Fort Condor mini game. So it's basically Fort Condor, but on a board instead of on a hill on the side of a mountain. You do that a few times, but it's less as much of a, this is a free thing, I think, that you do all the time versus something that you do for specific purposes. But anyway. Beyond that, I guess we'll talk about the Steam Deck visuals and performance. So, the recording I have here, unfortunately, is just from the very beginning of the game, because even though I tried to record some gameplay last night, it didn't record for whatever reason. But I'll say, first of all, that it is very blurry. It doesn't look too bad in this gameplay that I have displayed here, but a lot of times it reminds me of playing games like The Outer Worlds on the Switch, where it's just extremely blurry character models and everything else. And that being said, in terms of performance, with the right settings, I'm getting typically between 30 and 40 frames per second, because I capped it at 40. And it's not the best. It's definitely not something I would want to do all the time. Where Remake I played the majority of the time on Steam Deck, and obviously it was much better on desktop. Rebirth is probably going to be more like, most of the time if I'm playing on Steam Deck, it's going to be streaming from my PC. However, it's good enough to where I've been able to do some boss battles and stuff like that on the Steam Deck. And even though it's blurry, it runs well enough to where it's not too bad. It definitely is worse in terms of its performance when you're in towns with lots of NPCs, but it doesn't stutter like it did on Remake, which is nice. And I don't think I've gone in the open world in Rebirth on the Steam Deck. I'm pretty sure I have not. So it's hard for me to say exactly how it will perform out there. That's something I'll have to actually try out next time just to see how it is. But that being said, I'm not really sure I would necessarily call it verified. I mean, they say it's verified. I mean, I guess it does run better than Horizon Forbidden West for sure. But it's still not great. I mean, like, I haven't had any situations where it's gotten down in the teens for the frame rate, so at least there's that. But it's hard to say for sure whether or not that would be an issue. Pretty much, I just have resigned myself to not playing it on the Steam Deck unless I'm streaming it most of the time. And there will be some exceptions to that, like when I'm on my lunch break, for example, during the work week, because I don't really want to go through the trouble of streaming it from my PC, or if I'm, like taking a break from work or whatever, and I want to just boot it up and play for 10 minutes. Then, I can do that directly on the Steam Deck. It'll be good for, like, doing Queen's Blood matches, for sure, because it's, perfectly acceptable for that. And... Sorry, I forgot my alarm was still set. Yeah, I don't really know if I have anything further to say on that front. Yeah, I think that's everything. That's all the games I've been playing, so I will leave you to your questions.
Okay, yeah. So I know you said you haven't gotten too far. Have there been any major, or I guess from what you could tell, changes to the story over the original FF7 so far? I mean, or at least something that sort of like hints to something changing, sort of like how if you played through, just the initial bombing mission in Remake, you could see that there's something that seems a little bit off, just because they're sort of like hinting to stuff changing later on. Has anything like that happened so far with Rebirth so far from what you've been playing?
There's been a couple of things, but one of those would spoil something from Remake, so I don't want to say what it is. And even then, it's not expanded upon. So that's about the extent of what I can say from that standpoint, but most of it is basically the same. Just, told with the modern graphics and everything. Like, you have a lot of the scenes from Nibelheim from the original game are pretty much identical in terms of how they're done, just, obviously with much more modern graphics. Like even the scene with Sephiroth in the library, where he's like, it shows him he's like reading books, and then it shows him in a different spot, and so on and so forth. Things like that is like shot for shot pretty much from what it was in the original. Something I do want to note that's interesting that I didn't realize. I assumed it was Nomura who had written the story. And even though I think Nomura definitely has his hands in some ways, especially in Remake, I guess it's Yoshinori Kitase that actually wrote the story for these. And apparently Nomura wanted to keep the story the same as it was originally. So, okay.
Okay, then. Well, then, I guess I owe Nomura an apology. Oh gosh, there was one, I guess something that, a partial question about how you feel about something. So while I was with my friend yesterday, we were talking about Final Fantasy VII, and he said that there was sort of like synergy moves or like abilities you could have in Remake. I mean Rebirth. He didn't go too much into depth about what it is. Could you tell me what that is or like how that works?
So I can't like fully explain every single detail about it because but basically it's just like, it's kind of like the dual text from Chrono Trigger, sort of. So some of them you can do like just about at any time, like with and I mean these are things that you have to unlock on your skill tree, but there's one with like Cloud and Barret where Barrett will fire bullets at the sword, and you can like reflect it back at the enemy, and then you can just do it over and over and over. You don't have to. It doesn't use up any ATB charges or anything. But then there's like more fancy schmancy, like typical anime, like type dual attacks that are more like the dual attacks that you get in Chrono Trigger and that sort of thing, which are the ones that I don't fully understand exactly how you activate them. I guess I just didn't quite read it that closely when I was when I've done them, and I haven't done them a ton. But one thing that is kind of nifty about that is if you ever get to a point where you as long as you have additional party members around you, because like whatever party members are not in your party will still follow you around and will still sort of aid in combat. If you get down to a point where you just have one character left, you can do those synergy attacks with each of the party members that are not in the party. You can only do them once, but it's just kind of a cool thing. I've only had that come up one time, but it's kind of neat.
Okay, yeah, thank you, because like he mentioned it, but he didn't really go into too much depth about what it was, and I was like, yeah, I'll ask about that tomorrow. So yeah, that was definitely good to know. So with the card game, is that similar to how it was in, say, Final Fantasy 8 and 9, or is that like sort of a completely new type of card game, based on how they're played?
Right. I mean, it's similar in the sense that it has about the same amount of impact, and it's you go off into a separate screen and all that. It's completely optional. But I mean, the card games between 8 and 9 are different anyway, so it's really just another different card game. So
okay.
Like Triple Triad from 8 is my favorite of those card games. I did not like Tetramaster at all. I've never understood how that game actually works. And Triple Triad, I loved that game. But yeah.
Yeah. And I guess one more question I was gonna have with regards to the settings. So this time around, I know you said they have more options than they did with remake. So do they actually sort of have a medium type of setting now? Something that, for people who can't or might not want to push things as far as high, but at the same time don't want to have to deal with low either.
Yeah, there are medium settings. As for how much I can't remember if all of the settings have a medium option or just some of them. But yeah, I think probably all of them do have a medium setting.
Okay. All right.
But from like watching some videos with optimizing the game, it seems like a lot of the settings, it makes very little difference whether you're on high or low or medium. And I mean, like there's only like one setting where it actually makes a significant difference going from high to ultra, and otherwise the rest of them, it's kind of like if you have a good enough rig, it's not going to make much difference.
Okay, so I guess essentially the same as remake in that regard then, where it's not really too much of a difference if you can handle it at least.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's good to know then. So I think then that's all of the questions that I have for you.
All right. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything else to mention on that front. Enjoying it so far, just not super far into it. Haven't had a whole lot of time to play, so it's just been playing where I've been able to. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then I guess we can get into the news. So let's start off by talking about that Xbox Partner Direct. And I think we should just talk about the games in the order they were shown. So we did find out what that mystery Japanese game was. It was not anything that either of us were thinking. I actually heard the rumor of what might be a little before they actually showed the direct. I think it was like maybe the day, or maybe like earlier the day of, or something that I heard. But Ninja Gaiden 4 was their big game that was shown, and so I guess let's just talk about that. What are your thoughts on Ninja Gaiden 4?
Well, that definitely took me by surprise. I was not expecting Ninja Gaiden to appear, and I mean, to a degree, it kind of makes sense that it would be that particular game, considering the fact that the original reboot trilogy really started out on the Xbox,
Forgot about
on the
that.
original Xbox, which is, kind of poetic in a sense. Um, I mean, it's great. I think it's that we're getting 4, years later after 3.
Yeah.
Even considering the fact I think like even with Razor's Edge coming out, it definitely was. It still would have been like years since that, at least over a decade, I would say. But yeah, definitely surprised about 4, and I mean, I like it. I think this is pretty cool. If they could make another game that's as good, stands up as well as the other ones. Haven't finished the other ones. Like, in fact, 3 was the only one of those games that I played. I played that on the Wii U,
Of course.
and
Former
I made
Nintendo
it up
fanboy.
to
I said former Nintendo fanboy, so.
yeah. I made it up to I think after one of the boss fights in like the laboratory on the island. I think that's about as far as I made it, because I think shortly after that the disc wasn't working anymore. But from what I played, it was definitely enjoyable. It definitely was tough though. I will say that it definitely I definitely had to work my way up to that point. So if they deliver another tough as nails game like that, then yeah, I'm in for something, for a treat. I mean, it definitely is something that I would say is definitely more skill based than I would even say Dark Souls to a degree, just because you can't try to cheese your way. Or I mean, maybe you could try to cheese your way through, but it's not something like with Dark Souls. You could just say, yeah, I'm just gonna throw magic at it, or I'm just going to try standing on a ridge somewhere and shoot arrows at a boss. Like this one, I would say is definitely more technical based than Dark Souls to that degree. So I think in that sense, it's definitely kind of harder. But it's still something that I wouldn't mind slamming my head against the wall trying to play. So I'm looking forward to that. So it's definitely a nice surprise that Xbox has coming, and the fact that's coming to multiple platforms is also great. So that way more people can play it. So if you don't want to play on Xbox, you can play it on PC. You can play it on the PS5. Have at it. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say. Everything I have to say on that particular game.
Yeah, I thought it looked great. I have never played any of the Ninja Gaiden games, so I would definitely want to play the original trilogy before I even consider trying this one out. But I mean, it looks cool, and I think that even though these games are difficult, I feel like with the experience we have from playing games like Dark Souls, even though obviously it's different, the experience of dealing with difficult games would make it easier to play than it would be otherwise. So definitely will keep my eye on this. I added the original trilogy to my wish list on Steam, so probably at some point I'll end up grabbing that when it's super cheap and give it a try. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was cool. I was glad that they showed it off. And yeah, I totally forgot that they had originally brought the reboot that it was on the original Xbox. I totally forgot about that until you mentioned it. So, but yeah, good stuff. But along with that, they shadow dropped a remake of Ninja Gaiden 2, which is Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. And any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so that definitely took me by surprise that they would just drop that game, and I'm a bit surprised as to why they would just drop only 2. I don't know if that one in particular is a fan favorite out of the original trilogy. I mean, I know I've heard people say that 3 was the weakest out of all 3 games, but I don't know if 2 was like held to a higher standard. Like fans really love that one the most as to why they just only did that one. But I think it's kind of cool because I know that longtime fans aren't fond of the Sigma versions. So like Sigma 1, Sigma 2, and Razor's Edge, they kind of like the original OG uh, Xbox One. So like to have this one that is a remake of the action and in the style of the original Xbox version is definitely great. Um, and so that way people can actually have that original experience, because I think otherwise you would have to try to make mod, or like you would have to mod the Sigma versions to try to get that original difficulty, and also get like the other versions, other stuff that was cut out as well into the game. Now, one thing that made me think, I'm a bit, it kind of gave me an uneasy feeling, which is the fact that it's made in Unreal Engine 5,
Yeah.
which I'm like, I don't know. Did you have to do it that way? But I mean, I guess it is what it is. I'm still interested in trying it out. But it's not something that it definitely wouldn't make me say, yeah, I'll go ahead and get this right away. Like something I would say maybe sometime down the road at a good discount, I might get it. But definitely great to see, and it's interesting too because I'm pretty certain it was either, it might have been late last month, but I'm pretty certain it was still announced this year, or at least earlier this month. We have 3 Ninja Gaiden games that have been announced. We have
Yeah.
the first one was the 2D Ninja Gaiden game that was announced previously. We have Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, which was just shadow dropped, and we have Ninja Gaiden 4 coming out. So it's a pretty good revival of the franchise. So like even if you want to say, well, I don't want to play the reboot games, I want to play like the original games that were kind of like on the NES. Well, you have the 2D one, which I think should still satisfy fans of those types of Ninja Gaiden games as well. So if you want sort of like a harder 2D Ninja Gaiden game, then that might be there for you. And that's also one that I said I was looking forward to trying out anyway. And that one also, that one's the only one that isn't developed by Koei Tecmo, but I still think I think it's like Dot Emu's developing that one. So I think that one, based on like, I always remember the dev for that game, they've done a good job with, putting care and passion into these types of franchise revivals. So I definitely trust that game should be good as well. But all in all, solid time so this is a great time to be a Ninja Gaiden fan. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, for sure. I think the reason they did 2 was because the original Ninja Gaiden already had Ninja Gaiden Black, so they just did the next one that hadn't been done yet.
Okay.
Because I was just looking it up. Ninja Gaiden Black was just a compilation of the original Ninja Gaiden with the 2 Hurricane packs. I don't know what that is, but as I mentioned, added to it, and it has new in-game cutscenes, that sort of thing. But anyway, yeah, that's probably the only reason why they did Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. My guess is that sometime later they'll do Ninja Gaiden 3 Black. In terms of my interest in it, like with the others, I haven't played any of the original Ninja Gaiden games, so while I'm interested in this one, I am not sure how easily I'd be able to get Black, because I think that the trilogy that you can get on Steam is probably not the Black version. And
no, those are Sigmas.
Are they?
Yeah, those are the Sigma versions that were from
Yeah.
the PS3 and 360, I believe.
Okay. Well, I'll have to look and see if there's some other way to get Ninja Gaiden Black other than just emulating the original Xbox, but there might be. But yeah, I don't really have any other thoughts on it. Once again, I think it's interesting, and I might be interested in checking out these games someday, just not in any sort of rush. But yeah, now knowing that it's the Sigma versions of those other games, I'm less interested in that trilogy, and that's good to know. But the next game that they showed off, which of course we already knew about, but was Expedition 33, and of course we had already seen this before. Um, Turn-based RPG, heavily influenced by Japanese RPGs, but also featuring some combat element or some like active combat elements. Um, but they do make it optional to do the active stuff. You can do purely turn-based if you want, and there's a lot of different customization to how you can handle combat scenarios and everything else. But what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I was intrigued by the game initially when it was released, but I still I like the stuff that they've shown so far. I still think that this is a game that really has caught my attention. I think is probably the first, I mean, maybe not the first, but it's definitely one of the major, I mean, technically, I mean, Baldur's Gate is turn-based, but at least the one that really caught my attention. This is the first Western RPG that really is, made me think, huh, this is pretty good. This is something that probably could, stand up with the JRPGs that have come out in recent years and people can enjoy it. I mean, I'm also surprised too that the game is only going to be $50.
Yeah.
Consider the fact that with a lot of Xbox titles, they're they're starting to be $70. The fact that we've got something that's less than 60 is pretty interesting. I mean, right now also, if you pre-order, you can get you can get a 10%, so $5 discount, so $45. I'm definitely still interested in getting the game. It's definitely very interesting to me, and yeah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to this. I don't think this might not be something I get day one, but it is something that I probably would get some, like, maybe sometime after release. But I mean, also another thing is it's releasing in April too, so
Yeah.
pretty soon as well. That's definitely something else as well. That's pretty cool. So all in all, I am still looking forward to this game.
Yeah, I mean, this game just it's impressed me ever since I first saw it, and I absolutely want to play this game. Um, I don't think it's going to be a day one for me either, mostly because of just when it's coming out. It's not really a great time, especially because I have numerous other games that I've already either that I'm already currently working on and don't know if I'll be done with, or games that I'm just like, I think there are games that are higher priority on my list. But the fact that it's only $50 is definitely something that makes me consider it being a close to day one purchase. Either way, I think it looks incredible. I mean, visually it looks stunning. I love the combat system. It's very obviously heavily inspired by Persona, especially like Persona 5. And I don't know, it just looks amazing. So I'm very, very interested in this game, and looking forward to checking it out whenever I do. I think there's a decent chance that I would end up playing Metaphor before I play this one, just because that one I've already at least technically made some progress in, because I can transfer my save over from the demo. But if there's a demo for this one, I'll definitely be checking out the demo for sure. And either way, I think it looks really, really great. So it's one, if I didn't already have multiple other games, like even new games that I know that I want to be playing, this would probably be a day one purchase for me. But yeah, so that's about all I have to say about that. I just think it looks great. I'm glad that it's coming to all these platforms. I have a feeling some of these will also be coming to the Switch 2, but they just haven't announced them yet, probably because they're going to be shown off at the Switch 2 presentation. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. All right, the next thing we had shown off was South of Midnight. So, of course, obviously this wasn't the first time we heard about this, but we got a look at what the story is about, and a closer look at the gameplay. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the gameplay definitely looks a little better to me than when initially I saw it. Um, I'm still not, convinced or sold on the game at all, but I mean, it looks better than initially. Now, some of the animation, I will say, I feel like is partially part of a trend because I can't remember. I don't know who started it, which movie started this, but like sort of like the stop motion trend in a
Hmm.
sense, or trying to replicate that through CGI. And I really don't like that look of just things looking like they're running at 20 or less frames per second. It just doesn't look right. Like with actual stop motion, I understand why it looks that way because you're actually moving uh, you know, clay and moving and trying to adjust it for frame by frame. So I can understand why that's not as clean. But if you're using CG and trying to replicate that, it just doesn't look that great to me. I remember seeing a clip of the Spider-Man verse
Oh yeah,
films. I thought, is it supposed to actually look like this? I
yep.
thought something was wrong with the video at first, and I realized no, it's actually supposed to look like that. And I thought, why? So like, I mean, it's not happening all throughout this game, but just like a couple clips I had seen of South of Midnight, I was like, it looks like it's doing the same thing that those types of films are doing.
Hmm.
But yeah, and also with this one, another surprise that it's coming in April as well. So
Yeah.
Xbox is releasing these games pretty early this year.
Hmm.
And so I mean that's definitely great for people who have been waiting to hear something new. And I mean, of course, they still have games down the road, some that we have already known about, and possibly some that we don't know about. But it's definitely pretty good that we have some stuff coming up pretty soon. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about the game.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, I don't remember them saying it in the presentation, but I think it's basically been confirmed that you don't have to do the stop motion thing, at least not in the gameplay itself. I'm not sure if you can turn it off during cutscenes. I mean, I hope you can, but I think like I don't mind it as much during the cutscenes necessarily. Um, I just wouldn't want it during actual gameplay, and
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure that either they said it in the presentation and I just missed it, or it's just been confirmed otherwise that that stop motion is not something you have to have in actual gameplay, which is super good. I mean, super helpful because I do not want it in gameplay. Like it definitely is weird. Like in in the Miles Morales game, you can actually um, put on the Into the Spider Verse costume, and also as an option, you can set it to have that weird stop motion thing. I mean, the game still runs at the same frame rate. It's just the characters that are the stop motion thing, but it's still, like, plays fine. It just was weird. I didn't like it in gameplay. Um, but yeah, as far as the actual how the game looks and everything, the gameplay itself, it still gives me Infamous vibes in some ways, and I'm cautiously optimistic about it. It's still not something where it's like a day one thing, especially because right now I just have too many games, and as interesting as this looks, I mean, I'm not in a position like many console people are where they're looking for the latest new thing to play. I'm just like, I have stuff that's new to me all over the place. My Steam library is huge, not as gigantic as yours, mind you, but um, big enough to where like I have more than enough stuff to play. And I mean, as it stands, like this year, just thinking about the stuff I've already committed to, like I'm gonna be buying day one. There's, I mean, I got Rebirth, of course, and then in March there's Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which reminds me, I'm planning to probably do my Extra Life stream the day after that releases. Um, that's my current plan anyway. That's what I have scheduled. And beyond that, it's kind of like up in the air in terms of new releases, not because there aren't things that interest me, but more just because I don't know how much time it's going to take me to do the games that I'm already working on. And, of course, I still would like to get the rest of the achievements and Death Stranding. And then, there's plenty of other games that I just want to play. So this one is another one of those where it's going to be somewhere down the line, I will probably buy it. It will just most likely be like when it's heavily discounted, because there's just no priority for me in buying this. But I do think it looks pretty great, and I think that it will probably be something I will really enjoy. Just not a priority for me right now. All right, any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
So now we get into the big guns, both figuratively and literally. Doom: The Dark Ages. And sure enough, the leaked date that we talked about last week for the release of May 15th is, in fact, the release date. Just kind of brief summary with this. One of the ways that they explained how this one differs from the other ones, well, for one, it is a prequel to Doom 2016, set in medieval times. And with Doom 2016, it was run and gun. With Doom Eternal, it was jump and shoot. And with Doom: The Dark Ages, it is stand and fight. And they make a much heavier emphasis on power and on strafing, like in the classic Doom games. And I have lots of thoughts about this. But I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, so this looks great. I mean, the style of gameplay, it definitely looks great, and all the different stuff you could do. Like, you're countering with a shield, you have your mace that you're using, you're flying around on dragons. It's definitely very different than the predecessors. And, like, visually, it looks great. Stylistically, it looks amazing. Because, like, it definitely looks a bit more grittier than the other ones did. I mean, like, the other ones did have a gritty look to them, but I mean, there was also the sort of neon-ish type of reddish in the design scheme as well, which added to that. But this one, it's more like steel and just pure fury. And so, like, also again, like sort of what we said about stand and fight, there definitely, as you can see, there's less of just running around trying to be frantic and take everything out. It's like, yeah, like you said, you're strafing around, and with your shield you can block attacks, counter them, and then you can still just go up and do some nice good glory kills. It's great, and I mean, it looks amazing, and the fact that it's coming out again in within the next few months is wonderful. Now there's one, I mean, apart from the fact that it's a $70 game, there's one real major issue that I have with this game, and that is with the requirements. And that is it requires GPUs with ray tracing.
Yeah.
It's another game that has ray tracing baked into it, which for the life of me, I do not like. If you want to have ray tracing as an option, something that can especially enhance the visuals of a game, go have at it. I don't care. You can have that. You can do it. It's fine. But to have that as a requirement is an issue with me. And sure, you can say, well, any GPU within X amount of years has ray tracing capabilities. Like, it's no big deal. But that's the thing. I don't want to use ray tracing if I don't necessarily want to use ray tracing. I'd rather just not have ray tracing, not have the game look as good as it could look, at the same time run the game possibly as well as I would like to.
Right.
And also, if I just want to run the game in general, because if I'm using a GPU that doesn't have ray tracing ability, then you can't do anything about it. Also, something else I saw on the Steam on the page, it says Steam Deck compatibility is unknown. Considering the fact that they say it's required, I'm going to say it's not going to be supported at all, just because Steam Deck does not support ray tracing at all. So, any sort of older GPU, like any GPU before RTX 20 series and any AMD GPU before the 6000 series is not going to run this game, just because you need to have ray tracing, which I really can't stand. But besides that, though, the game still just looks great, and it looks like it's going to be fun. But obviously, at least as of right now, since my current GPU doesn't support it, I'm obviously not going to be playing this at launch, or at least anytime soon, for that matter. Maybe down the road, we'll see. I'll get it. But then also, at the same time, I never have finished the previous two games, and I have to get back to those anyway. So it's not like I'm in any rush at all on that end. But it does look phenomenal. And also, as one additional comment, going back to something you said earlier, see, because of that gameplay footage about the PS Fanboy, that also made me want to play Doom, but I never got to playing some more of that. But it was just interesting hearing that it also influenced you to play the game as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have to say on this.
Side note with that, what's really funny is, when Oh No, It's Alex watched the reveal of all this gameplay for Doom: The Dark Ages, he was just like super hyped and super excited, and his editor, who does all of his editing but also does a bunch of clips from like his live streams and stuff, took his reaction from the Doom: The Dark Ages stream and added it to that terrible PS Fanboy gameplay. It's very funny. It's really funny. I'll have to send you that one if you don't come across it on your own. But yeah, so thoughts on this? Of course, I agree with you. I don't like the fact that ray tracing is required. I'm really hoping that, as with Indiana Jones, that someone... Well, I mean, as I was also hoping with Indiana Jones, that someone will create a mod that enables you to remove ray tracing. Because I just, like, yes, my graphics card can do ray tracing. I'm sure the game is going to be well optimized because I've been hearing from everyone that, like, Indiana Jones, even though ray tracing is required, it's very well optimized. Runs really well on everything except for Steam Deck, of course. But this is one game where I might consider breaking my stance on that. Just because, like, I know how well they optimize these games, and also because I really want to play it. However, it's definitely not a day one purchase for me, because it's highly unlikely that I'm going to finish playing through both 2016 and Eternal before this drops. So I'll just wait. It's really not a big deal to me. The only thing that makes me potentially consider trying it out sooner would be just doing like a Game Pass trial and trying it out that way, especially because I'd be able to just transfer my save. But it's not something where I'm like, oh, I need to play this day one. It's just more like, it looks great. I definitely want to play it, but if I don't play it day one, it's not gonna be a big deal. I don't think the hype is so strong. I mean, like the game looks amazing, and I really want to play it, but I really do want to replay. I'm just replaying 2016 and then replay Eternal and play all the DLC for that before I play this, because I mean, they're just incredible games, and they're so worth playing. And as interesting as this one is, like, especially since I've never finished the DLC on Eternal, I really want to play that before I play this one. But with all that being said, I love all the differences in how they're doing the gameplay for this. I just think it looks incredible. I mean, graphically, of course, it's impressive, but even if it wasn't that impressive, the gameplay just looks so much fun. And I love the use of the shield and the mace and I can't remember what the different weapons were, but the different melee weapons that they have are all just look like so much fun, and I don't know, it all just looks great, and I I'm excited for this one, even though it's not going to be a day one for me. So, but yeah, I mean, really, Xbox is. I'm very impressed with what they've been able to do because, we've waited years to see what all these studios they bought have cooking, and they have some really great looking games cooking. I mean, they just do. And some of them now are finally getting to the point where they're starting to come out, and we have 3 first party games coming out in like 2 months. And that's just really super impressive that they have that going on. And I mean, like, Ninja Gaiden 4 isn't until the fall, and it's funded by Xbox, but it's not technically a first party game. And of course, it's also going to be multi-platform along with these other ones. But yeah, I'm really impressed with all this. I'm glad, of course, that regardless of anything else, I mean, we were going to get these day one anyway because we're on PC. And yeah, I'm just it's a great time from that standpoint to be a gamer. And I look forward to checking all of these out to different degrees.
Yeah, I concur.
All right. Any other thoughts on this before we move on to the next topic?
No, sir.
All right. So we have confirmation, as not surprising at all to us, and shouldn't be surprising to anyone who's been paying attention, that Rise of the Ronin is coming to PC on March 10th, otherwise known as Mario Day. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this definitely was very interesting to see. Now, this was a game that when it originally was announced for as a PlayStation exclusive, I was really bummed out about it because it looks like a good game. It looks like a fun game to play, and I wanted to play it, but couldn't get it. But now it's being ported years later, and I am quite thrilled to see it. And
Less than a year later.
oh gosh, you're right. Less than a year later. I don't know what I was thinking of originally then, but yeah, getting it ported over is incredible. And I mean, it's similar, and it's sort of following that trend that the first Neo games had, where because these are also made by Koei Tecmo as well, where the games came out on PlayStation. Then I think it was a couple years with the original, or it might have been 2 years with the original Neo, and then at least with Neo 2, that came about a year later after releasing on PS4 or 5 or whichever one that was. But yeah, now we've got Rise of the Ronin coming over, and I'm pretty thrilled about that. And it has special features. It's got up to 8K, 100 FPS support. Now this, I mean, ultra wide, I'm not surprised to see, but never heard of super ultra wide monitors before. But that's also got support as well. It's got, for those who want it, FSR, but it's also got DLSS. And unlike what they did with the Ninja Gaiden trilogy, they're actually giving mouse and keyboard support as well. So pretty it's shaping up to be a pretty good port based on what we see here. And so I'm definitely interested in this. Won't be a day one purchase for me, but this is definitely something I could see getting within the year, like probably maybe the latter half of 2025. I could pick this up because I feel like it probably will be on sale maybe for like, I mean, it's like $50 now. It might be on sale for like 40 or 35, so I might get it later on at that point. But yeah, I'm definitely I definitely like this. It's pretty cool, getting this game coming over, and yeah.
Yeah. But you need to finish Ghost of Tsushima before you get this one.
That's definitely true.
Or at least before you play it. Especially because Ghost of Tsushima is so good. So And from what I've heard, this one, I mean, like I've heard it's good, but it has some jank to it. Not necessarily like, oh, it's bad, just more, it's got some of the Koei Tecmo jank that they sometimes have in, like, especially their Warriors games and that sort of thing. But I'm still interested in it. Yeah, I think I'm glad it's coming over less than a year after it came to PlayStation. Of course, because of the fact that it's being published on PC by Koei Tecmo instead of PlayStation, it's also $20 cheaper than it was when it launched on PlayStation. So that's nifty. The 8K thing, I'm like, okay. I don't know who has a rig that can run a game at 8K, but I mean, more power to you if you have the rig and you have the screen to do 8K.
Frame rate probably won't be good though.
2 frames per second. Yeah, but anyway, I think the game looks great, and I'm interested in it. But another one where it's just not a priority for me at all. I just have too many other games to play right now, and I'm not really itching for that kind of game. I mean, if I was really itching for that type of game, and I didn't just want to jump back into New Game Plus on Ghost of Tsushima, I'd probably want to play Sekiro. But, Sekiro, even then, I still haven't bought it because it just hasn't gotten cheap enough to where I've been like, okay, it's an impulse buy for me. I'm sure I'll get there eventually because it doesn't seem like it drops very much in price at all, but it is what it is. But yeah. I don't really have any other thoughts on that, I guess. All right. You want to talk about this shakeup with the PlayStation Network requirement on PC?
All right. So, Sony put out a new blog post on the PlayStation blog, and they are... Well, here's what they've done so far. Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and God of War Ragnarok are going to offer in-game content unlocks for users playing with a PSN network account. Now, you might say, well, what's the big deal? You've already got to log into the PlayStation Network anyway to play these games. Not anymore. Sony is now making PSN accounts optional for these games. And also, in the blog post they made today, they said that for certain future games, having a PSN account will be optional. Not for everyone, but for some, they will be optional. And also, in case you're interested, here are the unlocks you get for having a PSN account. For Spider-Man 2, you get early unlock suits of the Spider-Man 2099 black suit and the Miles Morales 2099 suits. For God of War Ragnarok, you gain access to the Armor of the Black Bear set for Kratos at the first Lost Items chest in the Realm Between Realms, and this previously was only accessible in a New Game Plus run, and a resource bundle, 500 Hack Silver and 250 XP. For Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, you get 50 points to activate bonus features and unlock extras, and you get Jordan's jacket from Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, as the skin for Ellie. And then for Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, you gain access to Nora Valiant's outfit. So that's pretty much everything that they've mentioned here today. I've got quite a few things to say about this, but what are your thoughts regarding this?
Well, it's funny. When you first sent me the article earlier today, I thought that it was just saying that, oh, you can get these bonuses for using your PlayStation Network account. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. I don't really care that much. I mean, like I have God of War Ragnarok. I'm not buying the remaster of Horizon Zero Dawn. And I'm definitely not buying Spider-Man 2 or The Last of Us Part 2. And the God of War thing is like, okay, that's cool. I don't care, though. But then I saw the fact that they were removing PSN requirement for God of War Ragnarok and future games. Especially, I find this especially odd after they had just added the requirement for PSN on Horizon Forbidden West 10 months after the game came out. I'm wondering if that means that they're not actually doing that. That's not entirely clear to me. I'm also wondering what this is going to mean in terms of the games going back to those regions that couldn't buy it before. I mean, does this mean they're going to suddenly make it available again in all these other regions, which would be great because then more people can buy the game. And hopefully this is what they're going to do going forward. They're going to go back to not requiring PSN because it's like I don't have a problem with them saying it's an option, and you get these benefits. You get trophy support. You get these in-game bonuses. Like that's great, but then it's still optional. And I'll use it because at least on the PlayStation titles that I buy, because I already have a PlayStation account. It's not a big deal for me, and I think it's kind of cool being able to earn trophies at the same time that I'm earning achievements, just because. But that being said, I think it is amazing that they are actually removing this. I don't have a whole lot of faith that they're going to go the full extent of where they could go and actually relist it in all those countries that they delisted the games, or the countries that just couldn't buy it before because they were in those countries, like God of War Ragnarok lists it for the first time in those countries. I really hope that this is a full sign of what's coming in the future. We'll talk some more about the leadership changes here in a bit. That to me are a signal that there's going to be some really big changes with how PlayStation is doing things with PC and potentially even Xbox and Nintendo in the future. But like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later. Otherwise, like, if they are legitimately going to make that requirement go away altogether and start listing these games in countries where they couldn't be purchased before or where they were removed, like with Helldivers, then I will give them applause. I mean, it's late. They should have just done it in the first place, but I still think it's a good idea to praise a company when they do something good. And because then they at least know, hey, this is something we appreciate, and hopefully that would help them to be able to get more sales out of these games whose sales have suffered dramatically because of the PSN requirement, like God of War Ragnarok. Because in my opinion, it's a great game and well worth playing. I understand people's arguments against it, most of them being that people just don't like the direction of the gameplay compared with the original game, so that's all well and good. But beyond that, there's plenty of people who would still enjoy these games, enjoy 2018 and want to play Ragnarok, but in some cases they couldn't do it because they were in countries where it was not available for purchase because of the PSN requirement, even though PSN isn't actually required for it at all. Because you can play it on the Steam Deck. And you can say no when they first bring up the thing. But anyway. Yeah, I think that's all my thoughts on that.
Okay, yeah. First off, I definitely agree. This is something that should have been optional from the very beginning. Like, if you want to have people use PlayStation Network and make accounts, fine. But don't have that be a requirement just to play the game. Especially since, as you said, there are countries where you can't even do that in the first place. You can't even make a PSN account, and you want them to do it now, and it was ridiculous. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea. And I think it's even worse considering the fact that if people are buying your games, what difference does it make if they have a PSN account or not? Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot because, A, you're saying, well, you have to have a PSN account. Okay. You're limiting the countries that where you could sell your game in the first place. And then on top of it, in the countries where you can sell it, people will just say, I don't feel like making a PSN account, so I won't buy the game. Like, that's you are severely crippling yourself. And I think part of the reason why they removed the requirement is because they don't have as much confidence of certain games selling as well. Like, for example, I don't know how confident they feel about Last of Us Part 2. I mean, they felt confident enough to sell it on PC, but I guess in light of what happens with Lego Horizon, they were thought, well, maybe we should. I mean, granted, I don't think that game didn't even have PSN requirements, but they thought, well, maybe to help boost sales, maybe we should actually lighten up on our requirements or our stances of requirements. So they said, yeah, we'll remove the requirement for Last of Us Part 2 because they probably wouldn't have been doing so great anyway. But just to make sure we can get more money out of it, let's remove the requirement. Um, so yeah, I definitely can see that being as the reason why. But additionally, um, you know, I don't see a problem with having this sort of, in this, I guess you could say, service. But again, have a good reason as to why. I mean, like you said, the the trophies. I think that's something that a lot of people really like, and it's probably one of the, like core reasons why someone would want to have a PSN account. So I would even say that's probably more so than just like a lot of the unlock stuff because you could probably still get most of these. I mean, based on what it seems here on the list, like with the exception of maybe The Last of Us Part 2, because I think it looks like the jacket is something you can't get through normal gameplay. So that being exclusive to it, that gives more incentive because everything else essentially, and then also Horizon Zero Dawn, that outfit that's like an early unlock. Everything else, it seems like you could just unlock by playing the game, which, if you're going to play the game, you'll probably get there anyway and get the unlocks. But, yeah, having these be exclusive, I don't necessarily have a problem with that because, again, it's an actual benefit you're getting, and that's something you would normally just get anyway through playing the game. So I don't have a problem with that. One thing that, as a result of this, I'm hoping undoes a fear I had is that this would allow games to start coming back on GOG, because when Sony started saying we're going to make this a mandatory requirement for every game, I thought, well, I guess that's the end of games going over to GOG because of the fact that GOG, that sort of thing doesn't fly there. But and so, I think the last game that got ported over was it Spider-Man? It was either Spider-Man or it was God of War. I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of those two. And and I was like, all right, cool. Another game's to me. Yeah, Spider-Man was ported over. No, wait, was it? No, it wasn't ported over. I haven't bought Spider-Man.
I know Horizon, Days Gone, and God of War are over there. That is the first Horizon game. I don't know if any of the other ones are.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, never mind. I thought it wasn't that Spider-Man has come over. That's what I thought it could be a next game, but but I thought, well, I guess we're not getting any more games brought over there, because I would like to see more. I mean, like I bought each and every game that Sony ported over to GOG because I was like, I want to support this practice. Being able to buy these games completely DRM free, even if I don't ever play them. Like, I didn't have any interest in the Uncharted Lost Legacy collection, but I bought it anyway because I said, hey, I want more of these games to get ported over, or not ported over, but brought over to GOG. Just so I can buy it, have a completely DRM free copy. That's great. And I did it with all the other games that they brought over, and even though I had Horizon, I bought it again. So I want to continue doing that. But when they said they're mandatory, I thought, well, I guess that's the end of things. Even if there are games where they weren't mandatory, like Spider-Man or like a couple of other titles. But since they're backtracking on this, maybe that's something that comes back in the future where, maybe later this year or next year we have the next title ported over, or again, not ported, but brought over to GOG. So I'm happy about this change coming. I'm hoping that, more games are going to drop that requirement, and that it's more like, as you said, only an option for every game going forward, because that's the way it should have been in the beginning. And you can have that, you can have those incentives, you can have those exclusive unlocks for the PSN account, but just don't limit people from playing the game, period, just because of that. Um, and like you said, hopefully for people who weren't able to play these games because of living in countries where they can't make PSN accounts, hopefully this opens up those games for them. But that is everything that I have to say on the matter.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was funny that I thought about is I don't know if this Unlock for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is something that's on PlayStation.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it might be, but it would actually be rather funny to me if being able to get the coat of a character from Naughty Dog's new game is exclusive to the PC. I mean, I can't imagine they would actually do that, but it would be really funny. I don't know. I mean, I don't have any interest in really either game, but especially not The Last of Us Part 2. So, to me, it makes no difference whatsoever, but yeah. And I thought about that too with GOG, them bringing more of their games over, and definitely hoping they do that. Yeah, because I could see some of those games that I would definitely like to grab there. I mean, in general, I haven't really found before they started requiring PSN. The only DRM they really had was just specifically Steam's DRM, and that didn't bother me too much. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I looked at their other games. I definitely want to play Returnal one of these days because I think that game looks great. I always thought that from the first time I saw it. But that's one where it's like it hasn't gotten cheap enough. Like I think the best it's gotten down to is like $35 or $36, and it's just I don't really want to spend that much on it. I don't want to play it that badly. I'd rather just wait, see if it drops more in price, because it probably will eventually. And like Days Gone is one that I was never really that interested in, but for like $10, $11, that might be worth grabbing. I wouldn't mind trying it. I've heard a lot of people like it. I got tired of the zombie stuff, and even though they're technically not zombies, they're zombies. I mean, you can call them a different name, but they're still zombies. I want PlayStation to bring over more of their PS4 games, because right now as it stands, when it comes to first party PS5 games, the only ones we don't have are Demon's Souls and might only be Demon's Souls. I feel like there's something else I'm forgetting about. But for the first party games, I think Demon's Souls is the only one that we don't have that we don't already know is coming. I mean, technically we know Demon's Souls is coming, we just have no idea when. But like I want them to bring the Infamous games over. I want them to bring the Uncharted trilogy over. Because like I bought the Uncharted Lost Legacy collection, or I don't think it was called Lost Legacy. I think Lost Legacy is the second game. But anyway, the follow-up to Uncharted 4 / like the side independent game. I might be remembering wrong, but anyway, the point is that like I'm very much interested. Like I would love to replay Uncharted 4, and I haven't ever played Lost Legacy, and I want to play them, but I want to finish replaying the other games before I jump into 4, and I just haven't gotten around to it because I have to connect my PS4 and then play them that way, and I just haven't been that motivated. I'd much rather just have them on PC and then just play them all that way. Play them on my Steam Deck, and be good. Something I do want to note real quick. They hadn't released the required specs for Spider-Man 2 even as of today. I did check, and they finally put them up, and they're actually really reasonable, which is good. I mean, for people who want to play it. Obviously, I'm not interested in playing it, but the requirements are actually really very reasonable at least for the minimum and the recommended specs. It's like recommended is a 3060, and 16 gigs of RAM, stuff like that. But obviously, in my case, I just don't want to play it because I hate what they did with the story. and that's a shame because I've heard the gameplay is great. Well, other than the Mary Jane sections, which are absolute garbage, but at least they made Miles fantastic in these games. But nevertheless, I will not support the game because I absolutely hate what they did with the story. So that's all I have to say on that. But if you don't have anything else, then we can go on into the next topic. And that
thing.
And that is that there has been a shakeup in the PlayStation leadership. So last year, PlayStation switched over to having co-CEOs between Hideaki Nishino and Herman Hulst taking over as co-CEOs for the company. And 8 months later, Herman Hulst has been more or less demoted down to just being the CEO of PlayStation Studios. Let me find the specific thing it says. So he will be CEO of the Studio Business Group. So he'll continue to lead the development, publishing, and business operations of Sony Interactive Entertainment's first-party games, and is responsible for developing games across many devices, including PlayStation consoles and PCs, and bringing video game IP to new mediums through PlayStation Productions. But Hideaki Nishino has become the sole president of Sony Interactive Entertainment. And then let me look at that article again as far as Hiroki Totoki, how his role has changed. Let me find that here. This is from Video Games Chronicle. As of April 1st, Nishino will become president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment as a whole, as well as his continued role as CEO of the Platform Business Group. And of course, we already talked about Herman Hulst, what he's doing. Sony Group President, COO, and CFO Hiroki Totoki, who had been serving as chairman of SIE with Nishino and Hulst reporting to him, will now step down from the role to become president and CEO of Sony Group, allowing Nishino to lead SIE. Something to note about Hiroki Totoki is that he was the one in the past who had talked about wanting to be more aggressive with their strategy of bringing games to PC. And now he's kind of I don't fully understand exactly how his new role works specifically, but Herman Hulst, was the one who had in the past been more of the person who was saying, first, just because we're bringing this one game over, which was Horizon Zero Dawn when that first came over, doesn't mean this is going to be the same case with every game. And then over time has changed it to not every game, the games aren't going to be day and date. Changed it to the games are going to come over, but they're not all, the first party games are not going to be day and date. Only the live service games. And then they started doing first party games, some of them day and date, but they're just not the bigger titles. So anyway, all that being said, we don't know exactly what these change-ups mean for the company, but what are your thoughts?
This is definitely interesting, and one thing that I was thinking about, and now just thinking about right now, stopping to reflect, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Hulst have a good hand in the idea of live service titles?
I'm not sure if they ever confirmed that one way or another. I think it was largely a Jim Ryan idea, okay. Jim Ryan focus. The only thing that I have kind of gathered from whisperings on the internet, I don't know if they're actually accurate, is that Hulst was not as pro porting games to PC as others were, and wanted more exclusivity, which of course also was the case with Sean Layden, who was the former president and Jim Ryan, I honestly don't know exactly where he stands with all that, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because originally I thought about it. I was wondering if he had a if he played a large enough role in the, I guess, the idea or the vision of having a lot of live service games, and then having Concord fail, and then drastically downsizing, um, you know, the scope of live service titles. I was gonna say maybe that contributed to his demotion, but it's definitely interesting to see the fact that I think, regardless, it's interesting to see that we were going to have co-CEOs. Now we're just going to have one CEO. So I think that's definitely interesting in general. Um, so I am intrigued though to see how things go in the future. I mean, it definitely doesn't seem like Sony's going to be slowing down anytime soon. And I mean, the fact that they still have a division called, you know, what was it called? The platform business group, which is responsible for bringing games to platforms outside of PlayStation and PC. It does seem like they're still interested in putting games on other platforms like Nintendo and possibly Xbox later on eventually. So that is definitely still interesting to see that. At least in that on that end, it's not like things are going to be reversing. And who knows, maybe things could actually start accelerating. But this is, definitely interesting to see.
So my theory on this matter, I think that, I mean, I don't know. It's very possible, like you were saying, that Herman Holst had involvement in decisions related to these live service games and everything. I'm a little bit less inclined to believe that because of the fact that he wasn't in the president role before this. I mean, before 8 months ago, and of course, most of these live service games started years ago. So it's probably a lot of that was Jim Ryan's idea, and some of the others. But I have a feeling, maybe just a conspiracy theory, but that Herman Hulst was actually demoted because he wasn't on board with the idea of bringing more PlayStation games to PC day and date, or continuing to shrink that window. That he was against it, and they didn't feel enough like he was on the team from that standpoint, because Hiroki Totoki had talked about last year wanting to be more aggressive with their strategy. And considering Hiroki Totoki is a numbers guy, because he's their CFO, or at least was in that role previously before he, or let's see here. No, I think he's still maintaining his CFO role, but he's a numbers guy, so he's looking at the numbers and saying, with the budget we have for these games, we need to make more money, which means we need to start bringing these games to PC sooner, day and date theoretically. We need to bring stuff to Nintendo. We need to bring stuff to Xbox even, because we cannot afford to keep making these games with these gigantic budgets and not sell them to more people. Furthermore, of course, there's the reality that having the PlayStation Network requirement drastically hurt the sales of God of War Ragnarok. I mean, there's no question that hurt the sales. Yes, there were, of course, some people, more probably a vocal minority than not, who were not happy about the race swapping thing, with one of the side characters, or a couple of the side characters. There's like literally 2 black characters in the whole game, and it's like, while I understand and agree with the idea that you shouldn't change characters' race just because, at the same time, I don't feel like it harmed the game at all, and the characters were still good characters, so I didn't really care from that standpoint. But I think that more people, apart from the people who just didn't like the gameplay of 2018 and weren't interested, I think more people didn't want to play the PC version, or didn't purchase it because either they couldn't purchase it because it wasn't available in their country, or because they were against the PSN requirement, and that really hurt the sales. They could have done a lot better, and by removing this, hopefully it will mean that the game will sell a lot better. And of course, if they actually start getting aggressive with their PC strategy, like Hiroki Totoki had previously spoken of, they could very well bring these games to PC day one. Start doing that. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of their back catalog that hasn't been ported over. I mean, the vast majority of things that were on PS4 and PS3 and PS2 and PS1 have never been ported. They could start bringing some of those games over. Start with the PS4 games. Those are probably going to be the easiest to port because they're on an x86 architecture. Much easier to port stuff over, probably. And of course, like Sucker Punch has already demonstrated that their engine, which they use for Ghost of Tsushima as well as Infamous Second Son before that, is very scalable, and they had a much easier time porting it over to PC. If they start doing that, they're going to get sales. They're going to get sales, bringing it to a new market, making more money in order to better fund their future projects. I still think it's if they don't start doing this sooner rather than later, they are going to get to a point where they just cannot afford to manage it anymore. I mean, they've shut down multiple studios. They shut down like 10 of their live service games that they originally had, 9 or 10 of them. And they're just not in a good spot. They don't have any... The only game we know of from them first party that's coming this year so far is Ghost of Yotei, which, if it's good, will do really well. If it comes day and date to PC, it'll probably do really, really well. But if it's bad, might not. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't want it to be a Last of Us Part 2 situation where they just completely ruin it. Or Spider-Man 2. Yeah, it seems like in general their 2s lately have been... They've improved the gameplay and then destroyed the story. But I'm hoping that Sucker Punch can be immune to that, because their games always have been great so far. But anyway.
Well, maybe that game will escape the curse since it's not directly called 2. I mean,
that's true.
God of War Ragnarok was a sequel, but it wasn't called 2. So maybe Ghost of Yotei has hope then.
Yeah, and God of War Ragnarok didn't do any of the weird stuff with the story to ruin it. Like, the only thing that I think people have a complaint about, really, when it comes to that, I mean, like, obviously, like I said, there's lots of reasons people don't like the game, and most of those reasons are just personal preference. But the quote-unquote woke reasons are dumb. Honestly, like, I really think that they're overblown and they're dumb, and while I understand the argument, I also think that it's... Maybe dumb isn't the right word, but they're making it way bigger of a deal than it needs to be. I do think that there is a reasonable possibility that Hermen Hulst was just not on board with what it was that Sony wants to do when it comes to porting games over, not just to PC, but to other platforms. And that's probably one of the reasons why they demoted him. They wanted people who were going to be on board with the new vision, because from a realistic standpoint, especially from a financial standpoint, they have to do this. They have to make this change. It's just not financially feasible to keep doing console exclusives all the time. Not with the current games budgets. So. But we'll wait and see what happens. I mean, I could be totally wrong, and it could be that Sony just decides to keep doing exactly what they've been doing, and then in 10 years, Sony will be something else entirely. But, yeah. We'll see. I firmly believe that one of their next 3 major tentpole first-party games is going to be day and date on PC. I do believe that's going to happen. And right now it's looking like Ghost of Yotei, Wolverine are 2 of those. And third game, I'm not sure. I think that there's a couple different ones that were in the Insomniac leak. but I don't know if there's any other stuff from Studio. Well, I guess actually Heretic, the inter, is it called Heretic? No, it's Intergalactic.
Intergalactic.
The Last Heretic, is that what it's called? I completely butchered the name last week, but
Let me quickly type that up. Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet.
Okay, Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. So yes, yeah, I think that is that's probably the game that they have coming. I think it's probably going to be Ghost of Yotei, then Wolverine, and then Intergalactic are probably going to be the next three big first-party games, unless they have some surprises this year that we don't know about, which is certainly possible. That's probably just going to be a remaster of some kind.
True.
Spider-Man remastered.
Oh goodness. But that definitely does make sense as to why he would be demoted. Especially, I think the biggest, I guess you could say, shock is the fact that this is kind of last minute. Considering the fact that last year they only announced the fact that he was going to be a co-CEO, and then not too long after, he's not going to be the CEO anymore. So either way, it definitely is interesting, but I think the idea you presented makes sense and sounds reasonable as to why that could be happening.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see, though. But, yeah, that's it for that topic. So, as our final topic, you want to talk about this GOG, or these two games that came to GOG, these two classic PS1 games.
Yeah, so we have another sort of shadow drop, I would say, in a sense, and that is that Capcom has released the original PC ports of Dino Crisis 1 and 2 on GOG, and with modern improvements. And this is something that GOG posted on Twitter today, which was saying, the only thing louder than the dinosaurs' roars were the voices of gamers worldwide demanding the return of a survival horror classic. We've listened. The legendary Dino Crisis and Dino Crisis 2 are back, fully playable on modern PCs. And so they've added stuff to it. You now play these games on 4K. It says the color depth has increased to 32-bit. It features the original Arrange and Operation Wipeout modes. And it's a part of, and this is a key thing, it's part of the GOG Preservation Program, which, as we've mentioned before, it's to help older games be playable on modern hardware. And this isn't the first time that Capcom has done this. They ported last year, I think around Halloween is when they started doing this. They ported the PC versions of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. 1 came out immediately upon being released. 2 came out shortly after, and 3 came, I think, near the end of December. And those games are also part of the preservation program as well. So this is the second time that Capcom has done this. And I mean, it's possible they could do more, but I have other thoughts that I won't get into right now. But yeah, that's essentially everything that's happened. Also, they're currently priced as in a bundle for $19.35. Individually, I believe it says they're priced at $11.37 on GOG. And I don't know if that's like discounted or not. Let me actually pull up the page though on GOG just to check. Okay, actually no, I think it's on. Oh no, actually the article says it's $19.35. That might be like the full price or like the price that's not discounted, because right now I see it's available for $16.99. So yeah, and let me see. I think individually does have the prices. Let me see. Okay, so it looks like the games are available for $9.99 separately. But yeah, so that's all I have to say for well, not all I have to say, but I'll let you get into your thoughts before I say what I have to say. So you can go right ahead.
Well, the first thing is that I hope I hope these classic versions of these games outsell that garbage looking game from that studio that is making that's making a an Unreal Engine 5 asset flip that's supposed to be heavily inspired by Dino Crisis. I can't remember the name of the developer, but they're the ones who recently were coming out and saying that they weren't going to be putting their upcoming game on PC because they didn't want PC gamers to do inappropriate mods for it of their main character. Although, based on the last game they put out being utter garbage from what everyone has said about it, it's more likely that the real reason that they're not putting it on PC is because of Steam's refund policy. Whereas on PlayStation, once you have downloaded the game, you can't get a refund. But anyway, yes, I hope that the Dino Crisis games on GOG sell better than that other game. That's probably going to be complete trash and is going to be essentially just a scam, a ripoff. That being said, I've never played the Dino Crisis games. I've always been curious about them, and I'm very interested. Honestly, I'm a bit tempted to grab these just because it's like, $17 for 2 games, that's not bad. And without question, they will run wonderfully on the Steam Deck. Probably run at, 240 frames per second on PC without question too, as well. And the fact that they added modernized controls is really nice, or at least, controller support. Because I don't mind a little bit of PS1 jank, as long as, it has modern controller support. I hope that it's something where I have a feeling this game probably has tank controls. And if it does, I kind of hope that they added something in to make it so you don't have to deal with tank controls and you can actually use the second stick the right way. But I'll have to look into that before I even consider it. Not that I need the games anyway, but Either way, I think it's very cool that these games are coming over, and it's just great also to know that they are part of the GOG preservation program. And it's just something else that makes me love GOG even more. So that is all I have to say on that front.
Yeah, this is great that this is happening. I mean, it is a surprise to me. It's not the first time that Capcom has put their games on GOG, even though those are far and few. But the Resident Evil collection, at least 1 through 3, that kind of took me by surprise because Capcom just, I think before that point, the last game Capcom put on GOG was Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen, and that's a game from way back. Granted, technically Resident Evil is a game from further back, but just for doing something recently, putting it on the store, that is very new for them. So the fact that they're also doing Dino Crisis makes me wonder, could they be doing that with some more of their older games, perhaps? Because it made me think, what other games did they put around in that era that they could possibly decide to bring over? Because I would be all for that. Having these games brought over, having the preservation, being part of the preservation programming, the fact that these games will be getting updates, even if they're not officially updated from, say, Capcom, that there will be support given to keep these games running on modern hardware and, potentially future modern hardware as well. So I think that's a great thing to have. And also, having these games completely DRM free, because unfortunately, with what we've seen with Capcom on Steam, they've been going back and adding DRM into games where they've either had no DRM or they removed the DRM. So having these games on a platform where we have guarantees that there will be no DRM is fantastic, and I definitely would like to see more of this happening in the future. But also, I agree with you. Haven't played Dino Crisis before, so this will be a first time. I might not play it right away, but I definitely feel like this is something I will grab relatively soon. Just because, like you said, I want to support this. I want to, see more of this happen in the future. And yeah, but like definitely good stuff. Great news to see.
Yeah, I'm looking through their list of games that you can vote for to have them add to the preservation stuff. And they do have Diablo 3 in there. And it's like, I would love to have Diablo 3 completely independent of Battle.net. That would be very nice. Especially if they could actually add in controller support, like what the console versions have. Because the control, I think the game controls wonderfully with controllers. And I would very much like to see that. But they have lots of games in the list, and I'm just kind of like scrolling through and upvoting anything I can that looks good to me. But I mean, there's literally 1,800 pages of subs you could vote for. So, yeah, there's lots of good stuff in here, and a DRM version of Doom 2016, or I mean a GOG version of Doom 2016. Yeah, I'm voting for that.
Yeah, I mean they've got most, if not all, of the old Doom games on GOG. So like if they tossed in 2016, that would be I would buy that.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop looking at that because I could just go down that rabbit hole for hours easily. But it's fun stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely very seriously considering grabbing the Dino Crisis games. More likely than not, I'll just add them to my wish list and then keep an eye on the prices and watch for a good sale. But the price, I mean, is really rather good. I mean, I think it'd be worth it. It's just, if it wasn't for the fact that I'm in the middle of other games right now, I probably would grab it and just start playing because I'm curious about it. It's one of those many games that I never played on the original PlayStation that I'm just interested in playing. And of course, I mean, I know that it was also on PC, but I never played the PC version either. So yeah, but anyway. All right, that's all I got in terms of stories and everything else. Do you have anything else you want us to talk about?
No, sir. Nothing additional from me.
All right, recommendations and dissuasions.
All right, so my recommendation, and this is something that I forgot to list last week, but my recommendation is to have a hobby, and preferably maybe 2 or 3. Now, I don't think this would apply to anyone watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, because if you're watching or listening, gaming probably is a hobby for you. But I'm only saying this because out of response to what I had seen the previous week, which was when TikTok was down for like the day it was down before it was brought back up. And I had seen people wondering what they would actually do without TikTok being around. And I was like, don't you have a hobby? Like, don't you do something for fun? Something that you would do in your normal life is like, if you're on TikTok all the time, what are you doing with your life then? So, just have a hobby, something you can enjoy. Like for us, gaming is a hobby. It's one of my hobbies. I have several different hobbies, but I say have 2 or 3 because say you feel tired in one hobby you're doing, you always have something else you could do. So for me, if I don't feel like gaming, or if gaming's not something I can do right away, I could do reading, and that's whether I'm reading like a mystery novel, reading comics, reading manga. I have my Gundam models I can build. Like, I have multiple hobbies because I'm interested in different types of stuff. So have a few hobbies that you can enjoy. If you have one good hobby, that's great. But just have a hobby at least, Don't be somewhere that's like, man, I've been only on TikTok. I don't know what to do without it. Like, don't be that type of person. So that's my recommendation. Have a hobby, preferably 2 or 3.
Very good. Very, very good. All right. As for me, I am going to recommend the Final Fantasy VII Remake series. So both a remake and a rebirth, especially on PC. But even if you can't play it on PC, playing it on PlayStation is still good, well worth doing. And specifically under Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, there is one particular feature, one particular graphics setting. It's the only one in there that you can actually set to ultra, which is background model detail. Change that to high or low, or lower. Do not do ultra. Is my recommendation. I guess technically you could call that a dissuasion, but I recommend doing high because high there's not much difference in how the performance is affected between low, medium, and high, or low and high and ultra, however it's set up. But there is a big difference between high and ultra. So it makes a pretty significant difference in performance. For the Steam Deck, it really doesn't matter. You basically just need to keep everything on low. But yeah, that for sure. Yeah, that's it. That's what I got for recommendation. So what's your dissuasion?
So,
Dissuasions?
sort of to related to that topic, mine is don't play Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Steam Deck unless you can stomach the dynamic resolution at 60 FPS, or unless you can play the game at less than 60 FPS by adjusting some of the other stuff, because it's just not an enjoyable experience if it's not enjoyable if you can't play it at 60 FPS, and it's not enjoyable if you really hate the blurry resolution of the character models. So definitely, I would just say play it on PC, play it on console. I mean, of course, now I was gonna say play on PS5, but it's coming to Xbox, so
Well, theoretically,
take your pick.
We don't know for sure yet.
Well, that's true, but I believe it's coming anyway.
Right.
So if you're gonna wait for it, you can wait for it to come to Xbox. But definitely, I would just say play it on anything but the Steam Deck, unless you are fine with making those compromises on one end or the other.
Yeah, I still maintain that 40 FPS is a nice happy medium between 30 and 60. And I will stand by that. Because I played most of Remake on the Steam Deck. And while obviously playing at 120 frames per second on my desktop was way better, I still very much enjoyed playing at 40 on the Steam Deck. And it was fantastic to be able to play a game like that on the go, especially because I specifically held off on buying it on PS4 because of the fact that I knew it would come. Well, maybe I didn't know, but I thought there was a chance it could come to PC in the future. And I didn't really want to play it on 30 frames per second when I knew that if it came to PC, which seemed likely, that it was going to have a better frame rate. And then I almost very nearly got it on Epic Games, and then the day I was considering that is the day that it came to Steam, and I was so happy that I bought it immediately. But yeah. All right. My dissuasion is I don't have anything written down, so I'm going to wing it. Because I know I had something, I just don't remember what it was. I guess I'm going to say if you cannot deal with very, very blurry visuals, don't play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the Steam Deck, because it is blurry. Now, maybe if I dropped it down to 30 frames cap, it might be better. Theoretically, it should be better, but without that, I don't know for sure exactly how it looks at 30 comparatively speaking, because I think I only briefly tried 30, and then I was just like, I'm going to try 40 because I can get 40 enough to where it's helpful. And it's 40 most of the time in combat, which is good enough for me. But yeah, if you cannot stomach the blurry visuals, don't play it on the Steam Deck. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Duly noted. Duly noted.
But it is well worth streaming to the Steam Deck, especially because you can get 8 hours of battery life while streaming it to the Steam Deck. So 8 hours of battery life and much better visuals and performance than I could get playing it natively. So, yep. All right, that's everything on my end. So, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. Earlier this week, this was week. I put out a just a fun little video I put together. A Metroid Prime 4 video in the style of the Batman Beyond intro, just because of the title name itself, just because of the Beyond part. And it took me a while. It didn't do everything I wanted to do because of the fact that I thought that the juxtaposition of having some of the clips from older games, and especially the 2D games, wouldn't mesh too well with the 3D, especially with the higher resolution textures and stuff. So I cut that stuff out, so it wasn't exactly a one-to-one style as the Batman Beyond intro, but for parts of it, they were pretty similar. So I was satisfied on that end, and it was just fun putting that together. As far as future content, not certain right now about what I'll do, but we'll see what happens as that comes.
All right. Well, you can find me on my gaming channel at the Frozen Gamer 87 on YouTube. This week I put out my comparison for the Steam Deck OLED and the Switch OLED for Persona 5 Strikers. Not getting much of any views, but I think that might just be the way it is going forward, and it is what it is. It's kind of turned into more of I'm doing it as a hobby, and maybe some of those will hit and maybe they won't, and I'm just gonna take it for what it is. But it is a pretty cool comparison. Please make sure that if you watch it and you have any issues with the way that it's presented, particularly in that it appears to have different lighting, please check the notes. I added all the notes from the description also to the pinned comment for the video so that you can see all the things that I did with it and understand why I made the decisions that I did. I may be making some changes in the future to try and get the best lighting for each system, putting them in the best positions. And now that I'm not dealing with the time of day being so much an issue because I don't have to worry about my kids being noisy since I'm recording it directly, then in that case it's that may be able to solve that problem I was having, and then I could just go back to the original location or whatever. But there's just a lot of stuff to consider, and I have to mess around with all the settings to figure out what's going to be the best way to do things going forward. So probably the next one I'm going to be working on will be for Hellblade, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. I do have now both the Switch and Steam versions of Freedom Wars Remastered, so at some point in the future I will be recording the three-way comparison between the Switch, Steam Deck, and the Vita with the original version of Freedom Wars. So Freedom Wars versus Freedom Wars Remastered on the other two platforms. But I have not done anything with that yet. I haven't even booted up the game on any of the platforms other than, the original playing I did on Vita. But that is at least in the pipeline somewhere down the line. I just don't know when it's going to happen. Then I also have my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. No new videos and I don't really have anything specific in the pipeline. I mean, I have various ideas. I just haven't gotten anything filmed recently, and I don't know when the next one will be. So it is what it is from that standpoint. We'll just kind of play it by ear, and when I have something new, I will mention it. But yeah, so I think that's everything for that. Of course, we do have the YouTube channel for the podcast. That's at the Orange Box Podcast on YouTube. I have not yet put up the clips, but there's also a channel at the Orange Box Pod Clips, which is going to have clips for all the segments of the podcast. I just didn't get around to getting any clips posted up last week, and let alone this week. So, I mean, most likely I will have the at least some of the clips over the past couple weeks moved over to that. The big problem I have with the clips for 2 weeks ago, when we talked about the Switch 2 and everything, is that with the exception of the Switch 2 discussion itself, the rest of the video that I had recorded, I had deleted because I thought I was done with it before I actually rendered the clips. So it's like, oh well, I guess I don't have clips for those, but I could still do the Switch 2 discussion. I think that was more relevant anyway. And then the other ones I've broken up, I just haven't rendered them yet and posted them. So there is a plan to have that up and running, but at the moment there's nothing there. So just keep an eye on that channel, subscribe if you are interested, and that'll be good for people who don't want to listen to a 2.5-hour podcast. So that being said, related to the podcast, or as part of the podcast, we have the audio-only version that goes up every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Time, and that is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, if I didn't already say that. I can't remember what all the different podcast services, but it's a bunch of them. Basically, any major podcast service, you'll be able to find it. Every Friday, 12 a.m. Central Time is when it goes live. And then the video version of the podcast, where you can not only see our beautiful faces, but clips from any of the games we've been talking about, including what we're playing, and the new games that we have watched trailers of and that sort of thing. That goes up at 7 a.m. Central Time every Friday on our YouTube channel. And if you want to contact us, you have questions, comments, want to tell us to Persona 3 ourselves, or anything else that you want to send our way, feel free to reach out to us by sending us an email to theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet us on X at theorangeboxpod, and you could write a review if you like on any of the podcast platforms. The only thing I found so far was one on Apple Podcasts that was written by one of my nephews, and I haven't read that on the air because it's really obvious it was written by a kid. So otherwise, that's really all there is to it. So though it would be kind of funny if my wife wrote a review and just talked about the main host, like talking about how good looking he is or whatever, because she's the only person who would write that. But yeah, anyway, that being said, I don't think I have anything else. So, any final thoughts?
No, sir.
Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I Am Zerocon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, don't stand still when you're playing Doom 2016. Orange Box Podcast, out.